So this is the $1 billion DTC ads playbook. And in the video, I'm going to be breaking down 5 very common patterns that we're seeing across winning ads from 7 of the biggest billion-dollar DTC brands, including Glossier, True Classic, AG1, Our Place, Chewy, Casper, and Magic Spoon. So lesson number 1 is actually going to come from Chewy. And that lesson is that you are likely running too many of the same type of ad. Now, what I've seen across so many brands is that they are almost entirely concentrated in one zone. And what I mean by that is that the actual avatar, the psychological problem that they are addressing in that specific ad is almost entirely in one specific zone. And that specific zone is either fear or problem agitation, i.e. they're opening the ad, the hook, if it's a video, whatever it may be, with, "Are you tired of XYZ?" or introducing the problem. Essentially, they are agitating that problem or leaning into that fear. However, there are no other instances of psychological aspects that they are leaning into. And therefore, the takeaway from this for a lot of brands is that you don't actually have a volume problem in terms of it's not a case of you're just not launching enough ads. It's that there's simply not enough diversity from a psychological perspective amongst the actual ads that you are running. So from the perspective of psychology, as you can see, there are so many different things that you can do. You've got things like before and after state. So you've got the transformation, i.e. what life looks like once the specific problem has been solved. You've got identity-based messaging, which is where, yes, you lean into who the customer becomes, what they gain. Sorry, not what they gain, but who specifically the customer becomes as a result of the journey with your product or whatever it may be. Social belonging, so other people like you are using this product. And then aspiration, but without the problem. So it's based on desire, the dream outcome, not always fear-led. Now, of course, as well, I'm sure you would have heard, and it is very much true, that people will typically run from a burning building faster than they will run towards their dream house, which of course makes sense. It's understandable as to why, therefore, brands so often go ahead and use this concept of fear-based messaging, because for that reason, people will run away from a burning house faster. But that said, limiting yourself to only that specific psychological aspect means that the amount of diversity, the amount of format and volume diversity you can test across your entire ad account is extremely limited. And as we all know, when it comes to Andromeda, you literally have to be as diverse as physically possible, which isn't just in terms of the formats. It's the actual psychological persona profiles, as we're seeing here, amongst messaging, copy, and so many other things. And the more chances you can give yourself to essentially resonate with different profiles and segments and audiences and personas, the better your ads are going to perform. And honestly, this isn't even something that you can just fix with more volume, because theoretically you could launch 250 or 500 ads every single week. But if they're all speaking to that exact same psychological profile, you're really not actually increasing the volume or seeing any benefit from that. You're just adding on more volume for the sake of it, but not actually reaching more diverse audiences, as it were. Now, as mentioned, the best example for this are Chewy. So as you can see, we have a couple of different ads that they've been running. First of all, we have this video ad here, which leans into the social aspect.
Chewy is the answer to some questions.
I'd be concerned about this.
Let's ask live chat.
So obviously a really short, simple ad here, talking about Chewy being the answer to dogs farting, essentially. Really kind of like leans into that, not necessarily social identity for the, actual fact of it being a belonging aspect, but more, it's a social driven ad because it's going to grab people's attention. It's humorous. People have probably been in a similar situation that they can relate to when it comes to their dog having the same problems as well. So it's very much kind of like a social, light-hearted approach. We're not diving really deep into this kind of like fear, problem, agitation. Obviously, that is a specific problem and a pain point for dog owners, but we're really not kind of like leaning heavily into that. As you can see, it was a very light-hearted format, very light-hearted style, really kind of focusing on the social aspect. Then we have identity here. So straight away, this hook grabs people in. I don't think you understand how much my dogs mean to me. Of course, we're going to be either resonating with other dog parents that are thinking, wow, the exact same thing. Yeah, my dogs mean so much to me too. And there's also going to be that kind of like identity play where people are going to be thinking, well, actually, my dogs mean more to me than yours do to you. Either way, it's a great hook because, yeah, it leans into that identity play, what the actual customer, who they become as a result of this specific product, how much, obviously, it kind of plays on to some extent how much someone cares about their dog. If you really cared about your dog as much as the person in the video, you would at least carry on watching, if not take action on this product. Really great hook. Then we have aspiration here, at least from the perspective of the dog. Really, really good ad here because we've got two completely distinct and different types of content actually going on. Obviously, starting with this kind of dramatic piece, going into this completely opposite style and format, style of content overall. Obviously, not necessarily aspiration from the direct sense of like, this is aspirational for a dog at least. But of course, it kind of leans into the entire play of like what my dog thinks he looks like, but also a really good kind of like social humor aspect as well. And again, the point here is that there are different psychological plays going on with their ads. It's not all just leaning into that problem, that fear-based agitation. And then we do have some fear-based. So obviously we're talking about how very simply the product is healthy and good for the dog. It's a simple case of leaning into the fear of if they don't use this product, their dog is not going to be as healthy and it's not going to be as good for it as the dog in this specific video. So overall, as you can see, the thing that Chewy are doing so well is that they are leaning into different psychological plays. And often for a lot of brands, this really is all you need to do. I think post Andromeda, there's just been this fear around you have to launch so many different types of ads. There's overwhelm. People don't know what to actually launch. They just think if we just load our ad account up with more and more volume, it will solve every problem. But going about it in this manner is considerably more effective. And honestly, taking a more intentional approach to mapping every video to a specific psychological zone will do more for your ad account than just launching a ton of new ads for the sake of it. So then up next, we have Casper, really effective, what I call the anti-specificity strategy. They're not leaning into the features, they are leaning into the outcome. Probably one of the first things that everyone's heard when it comes to direct response marketing, but this, in my opinion, is the most clear and obvious example of how they do this really well. They have this pattern live across their ads right now. If you check their ad library, they have so many variations of this. I really like this. It's basically hello, specific, relatable annoyance. That is the main headline for a variation of these ads that they have running. Hello, 1 hour meeting that turned into 3 hour meeting. Good night, day. Hello, double tap on my best friend's boyfriend's post from 4 years ago. Good night, day. Hello, Doug in the office who runs cold. Good night, day. So really what they're doing here is they are what we call anchoring to the bottom line emotional metric. Now, obviously, none of these ads are mentioning specific features. They're not talking about messaging with regards to the mattress whatsoever. They are simply talking about common annoyances that people, their audience will relate to, or at least relate to a similar situation. And then they're very just simply selling Casper as the relief to that. And what I really mean by anchoring to the bottom line emotional metric here is, yes, Casper is the product, it's the relief, it's the payoff. We're talking about someone having a bad day, and then the bottom line emotional metric being that feeling of relief when they're able to get in their bed. At the end of the day, it simply is the mechanism, and the dream outcome that they are selling here again is that relaxing feeling after a long, stressful, annoying day when you can get into a nice, comfortable bed. The day always ends well with Casper. Again, no mention of the mattress whatsoever. They are selling the feeling of getting into a bed after a bad day. And the mattress is just specifically the mechanism that delivers that feeling for them. So very simply, the common theme across all of their ads is literally this, as you can see. They're talking about, okay, this is the mattress, but then we're pointing to a specific moment in the day, as we can see from these variations at the top of the ad, and then the emotional payoff, the reward as a result of that, which they are tying their product to. Really, really effective approach here, because especially when you have a lot of products that are more commoditized, I've mentioned and spoken about this before, but there's only so many features that you can out-feature your competition on. Let's say you have, obviously in this instance, you're selling a mattress, or let's talk about something like the Ridge wallet, a great example of this. They're selling luggage, they're selling wallets, they're selling MagSafe chargers. Obviously, there's a variety of different products, and just like Casper, they are very commoditized. There's only so many features you can add to a mattress, a wallet, a piece of luggage that other competitors don't have, so therefore you can't out-feature them. What you can then, however, do as a result is sell the payoff. So if you look at the ads that Ridge have running, we're talking about the relief when you get to put your luggage above default when you're on the airplane, and you don't have stress, you don't have hassle about it fitting or whether it does or doesn't fit. You just have that emotional relief, that payoff. It's a relaxing experience as opposed to other pieces of luggage that are clunky, they're oversized, they don't fit in the overhead locker like their luggage does. And it's exactly the same here with Casper. When you don't have that many specific USPs that you can really obviously focus on compared to competitors, the us versus them approach doesn't really resonate here, and it doesn't work because I'm pretty confident that most other mattress brands could probably go feature for feature with Casper. They have to talk and lean into that specific payoff. Now, of course, again, this is something that other mattress brands could do. They could run this exact same format. They could talk about the exact same relief, the feeling of getting into bed after a bad day. So then really what it comes down to in terms of how to perform better than your competitors is who thinks the most creatively, who has the best ideas when it comes to something like this, who can sell this feeling the best when it comes to grabbing their audience's attention. And something that they also do really well is they focus on one feature. So the odd occasion when they do dive into a feature, which, as I mentioned, they don't do too often because they focus more on that emotional payoff, they focus on one specific feature. Now, I'm not a mattress expert by any means, but I'm sure that there are multiple features that go into a mattress. But the one thing that they focus on across all of their ads is the cooling aspect. Now, I'm sure, of course, that there are, as I said, many other features, but the thing with Casper is that this is probably what they've identified as the biggest pain point their audience struggles with, or the biggest emotional reward and payoff that they have noted in post-purchase surveys from people that have purchased this specific mattress. But if you watch this video right,
You're like me and run hot at night. This mattress didn't age free.
Has this really amazing cooling technology that keeps you cool all night long.
I can literally feel how cold the front of this mattress is. With my old mattress, I frequently woke up with a pool of sweat, and now I don't.
I look forward to going to sleep at the end of every day.
so very simply what they're doing here is, as I said, leaning into one very specific feature, which is that cooling technology that they have. Now, this is the one opportunity that they do have to maybe focus on the features a bit more because, again, I'm sure there are other mattress brands that have similar technology, but if this is something that is proprietary to them or they consider a USP, they want to double down on this. And if you, again, look across their entire ad account, they have so many different pieces of content just leaning into that feature. They have multiple creators talking about it, loads of social proof, that rapid fire social proof, as you can see here. In this 120-second ad, we had about 3 or 4 different creators literally giving that validation, that social proof, and varying the actual messaging. So if you look at this again, the hook is,
You're like me and run hot at night. This
if you're like me and you run hot at night, this mattress dream. So then obviously we're leaning into the pain point first of all. We're not even mentioning in that hook about the cooling aspect. We're just talking about the pain point of it being really hot and people struggling to sleep at night.
Really amazing cooling technology that keeps you cool all night long.
Then we have the messaging of just the actual cooling technology in itself.
Let me feel how cold the front of this mattress is. With my old mattress, I frequently woke up with sweat.
And then obviously we have, I previously frequently woke up in a pool of sweat. So we have so many different variations of the messaging, which is basically you get hot at night, this mattress helps you stay cool. And that's multiple different variations of saying that same thing, which they have doubled down on. So really with Casper, what they have done is there's one of two things. They either go anti-specific with this thing where they focus on the emotional payoff and selling that feeling of getting into a bed after a very long, stressful, bad day, whatever it may be, or they go hyper-specific on one feature, which often, well, basically exclusively at this point, is the cooling aspect. So then next up, we have Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon is really interesting because what they do here is they, what I call, sell the idea of permission. So Magic Spoon is a cereal brand, but it's positioned more so as an adult cereal brand. And this is one of the most common strategies that they actually deploy. So the main psychological problem and profile that they try to attack in their ads is that health-conscious adults, which of course is an ever-growing persona, feel guilty eating cereal because of the specific health concerns they have around it. Their ads focus on doing one specific thing, which is basically just giving this persona permission to eat and buy the product. So 2 specific strategies. One, as I mentioned, is the adult cereal frame, but also we have what's called the illegal hack frame. So as you can see with this ad right here, this breakfast hack feels illegal. We reinvented oatmeal to be creamy and craveable with 15 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, and 1 gram of sugar. They're on sale now. Hopefully we don't sell out. Really great line at the end there, by the way, just for a bit of social proof and scarcity. But the headline, this breakfast hack feels illegal. What this basically, first of all, does is, yes, it positions the product as a guilty pleasure that at the same time happens to be good for you. So we're grabbing people's attention. It's intrigue. What actually feels illegal? What is it about this specific cereal that is so illegal? It's curiosity straight away, but it leads into that, yes, indulgence. We focus on like this breakfast hack. Then we go into the nutritional stats afterwards. They are justification for the hook. But I really like this frame, this illegal, the secret. What is it that people don't know? A lot of their ads deploy the exact same thing, and they have the freedom creatively to be able to do so because it's a very unique product in terms of they're positioning it as a cereal that adults have permission to be able to eat because it is actually good for them. But because people don't typically assume that it would be good for them, they can really lean into that, this kind of like secretive approach. Again, the breakfast hack feels illegal, really effective from like a psychological perspective. Something that is a guilty pleasure is always going to resonate well because you tap into that demographic of people that, of course, really want the excuse and the justification to be able to, indulge in these guilty pleasures. They almost are just waiting for someone to give them that permission. And that's exactly what they tap into here. And second of all, the second strategy they deploy, as I mentioned, is the adult cereal frame. So if you look at this video, first of all, right here,
I'm going to show you how to make what I call adult cereal. I call it adult cereal because I make it into a balanced meal, has protein and moisture. Here's what I do. First, you start with the cereal that has a good amount of protein. This one is Magic Spoon. It has 13 grams per serving. It's the chocolate chip cookie flavor. It's like the ones that you remember as a kid. I also like their peanut butter, or sometimes if I'm feeling wild, I'll mix them. Bowl is filled. We don't stop there. This is the important part. Toppings. I love adding fruit because it's a good source of fiber, but also just makes it so refreshing.
So really effective play here in terms of two things. First of all, when she starts by adding the toppings. As I've mentioned here, yes, this is deliberate because then we are leading into that health-conscious adult who obviously now thinks that, okay, I have permission to eat this cereal because it's a balanced meal. If you read through and obviously rewatch this, the entire messaging is based around things that adults are going to resonate with in terms of, we talk about the sugar count, the fiber, the protein, how it's a balanced meal, how it's a cereal for an adult, how we're talking about, the fruit being added to it. It's a very kind of like persona-specific level of language aimed at that adult. And we talk about how, like it tastes like being a kid again. She previously mentioned as well, just before this, in terms of how, just like how you remember as a kid, that nostalgia is always going to be something that works very well. It's the emotional payoff because from this perspective, people have that guilty pleasure. There's the rational justification now to indulge in that guilty pleasure because she's backed it up with the nutritional stats. Basically, everything that an adult wants to hear. And then there's the emotional payoff of making it feel like you are a kid again. It tastes like being a kid again. Anything when it comes to nostalgia always works incredibly well because ultimately, if you can create a moment that draws a memory back for a specific member of the audience, if they watch this and they can recall back to a moment in time when they were a child and they had something similar, and you can activate that specific feeling that brings back good memories, they are going to automatically tie that identity. They are going to associate that good memory that you have just reactivated with your product, with your video, with your ad, with that format of content, whatever it may be. And ultimately, you're going to be bringing people emotionally into your world. So overall, really, really effective in terms of selling the idea of permission here by Magic Spoon. But then moving on next, we have Glossier. Now, too many ads get stuck in the middle. And what I mean by this is that there are specifically two types of ads that work very, very well in 2026. Either on one end of the spectrum, fully native, very authentic, these very native style ads that don't even look remotely like ads. B-roll content works incredibly well. Native statics are even better at this. Or completely on the opposite end of the spectrum. So hyper-optimized direct response creatives. The biggest issue is that brands try to do both and end up in the middle, which is what I call the dead zone. And that's exactly where brands get stuck. This is specifically why you see those what we call yapper ads working so well, because very simply someone has picked up their phone, they have started recording their face, or not even their face, just direct to the product if it's a faceless ad, and it's authentic. And of course, in a world of over-polished ads, it cuts through the noise and works incredibly well. And on the flip side, it's why you see perhaps a UGC video that's been, formatted incredibly branded or you have captions in a specific font that aligns with the brand, you can tell that the creator is just reading from a script. It's overall too polished. It's why those don't work, because they are in the middle. And too many brands try to be both. They try to create something authentic and native because they know that that's what works, but then they cannot help and they cannot resist trying to over-engineer and adding direct response to that in a hyper-optimized fashion, which, yes, again, means that they don't end up on either end of the extreme, because by default, you can't be both at the same time, and they end up in the middle. Now, to the point here with Glossier, some of their ads are the best examples of this. So right here, as you can see, this static, friends of Glossier sales, set your alarm ASAP. Okay, but wait, really, really effective. They are leaning very heavily into this kind of like female aesthetic language, if that makes sense. Type of people on Instagram, the females, the 18 to 30 demographic that are going to be wearing a specific outfit, drinking their matcha. You know the vibes, you know the person I'm talking about here. This is the specific language that they use. Another great example of this is Shelby Sapp. If you follow Shelby on Instagram organic, or if you take a look at some of her ads, she's selling a sales course to women that want to become proficient in sales. Does the exact same thing incredibly effectively, an absolute masterclass in the correct messaging aligned with your audience. And they do something very similar here, as you can see. We're talking about the specific emojis that their audience are likely to be using. We're talking about the exact phraseology, okay, but wait, set your alarm ASAP, aka the universe telling me to go big. Really effective. The messaging is incredibly dialed in and attuned with what their audience says and how they actually speak verbatim, word for word. But the best thing here is that on this specific spectrum and scale, they are leaning into the fully native, authentic style. Obviously, the Notes app is not new. It's not a format that is novel to people. It's something that a lot of brands have done, but it works so well for that reason, because whenever you create something that doesn't look like an ad, it fits seamlessly into the feed. This is something that I hear Daniel Iles talk about very extensively. If you aren't familiar with Daniel, I would recommend checking him out on YouTube. His content is fantastic and is considerably impactful and effective when it comes to organic and paid social media. But one of the biggest takeaways from his channel is that the way the meta algorithm works is you essentially get taxed based on the pollution aspect. And what I mean by that is you need to fit in as seamlessly as possible to the feed. The way Meta designs their organic feed is to create and curate a very seamless experience for their consumers, because of course it's a consumer first product. And if something is going to essentially look like an ad, if it stands out, it's going to put people off scrolling. It's going to interrupt their experience, which means they are likely going to leave the app. And of course, for Meta, for whoever it may be for that instance, it's going to negatively impact the amount of time the consumer is spending on their app. So therefore, on the flip side, they are going to reward you if you create content that forces people to stay for longer. If it's content that people enjoy consuming, if they're going to stay on the app longer as a result, the algorithm will reward you for that. It's a very simple concept. But the point in case is that you should be creating content as a creative that people enjoy watching, reading, consuming, regardless of whether it's an ad. We've all been in that situation where we've seen an ad and we know it's an ad, but it's still such a good piece of content that we continue to consume it. And essentially, that's the approach that you have to take when you're going down this end of the fully native / authentic approach to a creative. And for Glossier here, this works so well for that exact reason, because of course it's an ad, but it doesn't look too polished. It's that Notes app style, that format. It seamlessly blends into the feed, the organic social scroll that people are going to be going through, and therefore works so well. You tie that in with the messaging, and it's a very, very effective ad. But then on the flip side, looking at the hyper-optimized direct response, this is a great ad right here. We've got this optional, these two different options based on the different products. It's a really nice, polished, but obviously interactive ad as well, because we've got two different products. There's an identity play going on here as well, because we're looking at the two different products and the type of person that uses each. Are you the sort of person that gets to the airport 3 hours early, or are you the sort of person that is 5 minutes and speed walks their way to the gate? If you are this person, you will resonate more with this product. If you are this person with this product, and so forth. Really well created. Overall, obviously, it is the complete opposite of this. It is not a native, authentic piece of content. but it works well because it's interactive. It's hyper optimized for direct response because people are now no longer considering whether they are within the target demographic of this brand or product as a whole. They are now being fit into this, and it's not a case of, are you interested in the product, yes or no? It's which of our products do you resonate with more from an identity perspective? So, of course, they know that most of their audience will fit into one of these two brackets. They are essentially forcing a binary decision. So, again, it's not a case of, are you interested in our brand or our product? It's, we are assuming you are. Which one of our products do you resonate most with from an identity level perspective? They would have done their research. They know that the majority of the people in their audience will be one or the other. So therefore, they can assign that identity to each product and get people in the funnel via that identity play. So really, really effective, as you can see, two complete opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of this specific spectrum, but just make sure you are not trying to be both and ending up being stuck in the middle. So then up next, we have True Classic. And what they do incredibly well is they position themselves as premium without mentioning premium. So very simply, and I'm conscious of saying the word premium too many times here, but brands, of course, at least for the most of them, they want to appear and position themselves as premium. But at the same time, they cannot say we are a premium brand, this is a premium product. So what they do here is, as we've seen very effectively by True Classic, is they specifically show it. They communicate the quality through almost a physical sensation. They talk about not how premium our product is, they talk about the features that go into the product that prove it's actually a premium product. They communicate that quality through showing. So for example, if we look at these two ads here and look at this one to begin with, we say it's 50% heavier than our classic crew. Now, if you've got a t-shirt that's very well made, it's going to be heavy because that alludes to the fact that it's very high quality cotton or whatever the material that goes into the production actually is. But a really effective ad here in terms of the visualization. Obviously, we've just got a simple scale. We've got the heavyweight tee, the classic tee. The heavyweight tee is weighing heavier down than the classic tee because it's a heavier material. And therefore, yes, like I mentioned, you can almost feel it. It makes the weight difference visible here in just a very simple static image. The weight, as I said, subconsciously signals more substance, more durability, better quality, and therefore value. But of course, they haven't had to mention any of those words. And then we have this ad right here, which is a very simple, almost before versus after, but also talking about the difference between the average brand. It's like a David and Goliath structure being applied here. Because if you look at this, we've got, if you own this, which is, another brand, their stiff lightweight tee, you should also try this. We're not even saying that it's better than the other. We're just saying that if you own it, you should also just try this. We're talking about the features, how it's a softer, a more heavyweight blend. They don't even need to name a competitor. Of course, it's just a very generic looking t-shirt, which could apply to any brand because every man already has a drawer full of these t-shirts, full of the Goliath, and they are very simply positioning themselves as the better alternative. Now, something I also noticed is that their entire strategy as a whole is built around the fact that men don't trust the claims from other brands because they have been burned before. So again, like I mentioned, a lot of brands are mentioning and they say in their messaging, in their ads, in their overall copy that XYZ feature is premium and so forth. But men don't trust that because they have been burned before. So yes, again, like I mentioned at the start, they aren't making too many claims. Now, of course, there are times where they've put, built with the premium feel, they're talking about a heavyweight blend, but their entire goal is not to just say that all the time and use that copy, use that messaging. They are making that quality tangible with these visuals that demonstrate the quality of the product itself without having to say it. Then we have AG1. So of course, one of the most analyzed brands in the world. Everyone knows AG1. Everyone's copied their ads and analyzed and recreated their creatives and so forth. But the biggest lesson that I've seen recently from analyzing their account is that one of the most impactful and effective strategies you can do, one of the most effective things that you can do in general, is trying to use creative as a testing way to find new audiences. One of the biggest mistakes that I think I see a lot of brands making, if I'm honest, is they find a persona, they validate that persona, they go deeper and deeper into that same persona. They therefore are validating their own beliefs because they have more data from that, which is giving them more of a confirmation bias. If you keep spending more and more of your budget on one same specific narrow persona, of course you are going to keep seeing it working because that's where you're allocating your budget to. But therefore, as a result of that, you are neglecting every other opportunity and possibility there is. So as I've mentioned here, the biggest opportunities are often in the lower volume signals, the smaller pockets of data that then allow you to point towards a new persona. So if you look at these 3 ads by AG1 here, your GLP-1s plus 1, obviously we've got this same kind of concept, support lean muscle preservation and steady energy on your GLP-1 journey. And then we have this video ad here.
3 things I wish I knew before starting my GLP-1 journey and how AV1.
So leaning into the GLP-1 audience. So it's a completely new persona, people that are already on GLP-1 drugs, not something that I've seen AG1 target and lean into before. Again, similar. You think about creatine. Creatine for a long, long time was a gym bro product. That was the target audience. That was the main persona. But then, 12, 18 months ago, argue the time, whatever it may be, it was roughly that period. A few Reddit threads, a few people were starting to suggest that women were also trying out creatine for different reasons. Therefore, a lot of brands started to spot this early. They had conviction to act on that data because of this research. It was way before it was mainstream and obvious. And therefore, you think about these colostrum-based brands and similar products, they unlocked a new market. It allowed them to go deep into this audience, test this out. There were loads of brands running great hooks, like, for example, Not Your Boyfriend's Creatine, just completely leaning into the opposite of the typical target audience, as I mentioned. And ultimately, like AG1 have done here, the only way that you can find these pockets of audiences, which until you test them, you don't know if they're going to be a huge persona, is to basically test them. Yes, you need to find these new audiences. We don't even know for a fact, and obviously there's no way of even knowing right now, whether the GLP-1 crowd, that persona, will work for AG1, whether people will resonate it. But they're testing it. As you can see, they're testing it very, very heavily. If you look inside the ad account, they have this kind of like +1 messaging. This is a really good overall concept because ultimately, going forward, in 12 months' time, this could be a huge demographic and persona for them. It could even be their main one, kind of like a lot of brands, and obviously now how they have creatine specifically for women. But ultimately, you have to test. If you keep doubling down on the exact same persona as much as it may be working, you will have that confirmation bias. You're going to keep saying that, yes, this works. And well, of course it works because you keep spending money. It's a catch-22, but you're never going to know what else works. Those low volume signals, those other small pockets of data that point to a new persona. When it comes to messaging as a whole, and when it comes to Andromeda, there's an analogy that I once heard and always try to explain what this means in terms of when people ask what actually is Andromeda and how it works, it really well applies to this. And what that analogy basically is you can consider the way the Meta Andromeda algorithm working the exact same way as when you drill for oil. Now, I'm not a specialist in this field by any means, but I do know that when you drill for oil, you have different wells. And ultimately, under the ground, you have these pockets of oils that you are drilling into. And sometimes you hit the jackpot, you find a massive well with tons of oil and, happy days. Sometimes you don't. There are just very, very small wells. You extract some oil, but it's not overly profitable. It's the exact same thing here with Andromeda and with messaging, with targeting in your audience. If you consider each of these oil wells to be different pockets of your audience, essentially, some are going to be bigger than others. Now, you may be drilling for oil and you have found a specific spot where, you have extracted oil. It's great. It's working. So you keep drilling in that specific area because that's where you've extracted the oil. But there are 2 problems. First of all, there are very well and very potentially and very almost likely are going to be much bigger pockets of oil in other areas that if you do not test and do not continue to try and find, you will never be able to extract. And second of all, the current pocket of oil you are drilling inside of is going to run out eventually. So it doesn't matter whether you keep doubling down and spending more, there's only so much oil you can extract from that specific well. And your audience is exactly the same. So if you found one audience that works really well, you don't try anything else, you just keep doubling down on that audience, you are going to run out eventually at one point, and then you will be stumped and not know what to do because you've extracted your entire audience from that one specific persona. And 2, you're missing out on so many other opportunities from other audiences that you haven't yet tested. So to unlock real scale, you absolutely have to be constantly testing low volume signals to find new audiences. And so then lastly, we have our place. And the main lesson from this is that every possible format of a winning concept must be deployed. So really the lesson is that you don't always need to keep finding new winning ideas. What you can instead do is just take one concept that works very, very well and remake it in every possible format. Now, slightly contradictory to my previous point regarding AG1, because obviously in that lesson, I'm talking about how it's very effective to be able to scale with different personas, which then would require new and different winning ideas. But the point in case here is that every ad account is different, every scaling problem that people face is different. So therefore, the lesson from this might resonate with you more than this lesson or vice versa, depending on your specific situation. These are just lessons that I'm seeing from brands that are obviously very, very successful and scaling on Meta, but of course, in different situations. So for our place, the winning concept here is that your cookware is toxic. It's very simple in terms of the fact that the main thing that they are focusing on is that the current pan that you're using contains chemicals that are harmful. Now, if you look at this video right here,
I've been using Our Place's new tiny cookware for all the little stuff that I make constantly. One egg in the morning, melting butter, shooting up a little sauce. Before, I'd use a full-sized pan for stuff like this. And then there's stuff washing the giant pan for 1x. These are the perfect in between. It's up super fast and wipes clean in 2 seconds. One of those things you don't think you need until you...
then we have this video. And then we have this static right here. So all based around the exact same concept of your existing cookware being toxic, or in this video, leaning slightly more towards the concept of, the cookware being overkill or not big enough for what you're trying to do, and you need that kind of perfect in the middle in between. But the point in case is that this is their winning concept. And that concept, obviously, as I said, being the fact that cookware is toxic. There are just different ways of saying the same thing, different formats. We've got this typical influencer UGC video. We have this influencer B-roll video, which works really well as a format because, side note, by far one of the most effective formats you can run because it just kind of fits in very well. People are starting to become a little bit used to seeing influencer videos. So when it looks like it's an authentic, actual UGC video, but not a paid UGC video, with this kind of B-roll, this native text that is native to these platforms, they work so well. But yeah, we have A-roll as it were, we have B-roll, we have static, all really communicating the exact same concept, but different formats. And yeah, you don't need to always keep finding winning ideas. If you have one main concept, even for example with AG1, what's their main concept? It's the fact that people don't want to keep taking 70, 80 different supplements every morning, and the solution is just one singular greens power. That concept of replacing your entire morning stack is the winning concept for them. And if they were in a similar situation, what they would be able to simply do is just create so many diverse formats of that one winning concept, which of course they have done and are now expanding to different audiences. But the point here from our place is, again, if you scan their ad account, you will consistently see hundreds almost of different formats all saying the exact same thing, some form of messaging variation based around the fact that the cookware that you are previously or currently using is toxic. So that wraps up these 7 main lessons from these brands and the patterns that I'm seeing across every single one of them. Now, every single thing in this video is very simple pattern recognition. The patterns that each brand are deploying, what we're seeing across all of these ad accounts. It's really a case of identifying the psychological aspect behind what they're doing. But then, of course, the case in question then becomes, great, so now we've identified these different patterns and the psychological triggers and the lessons learned. But what are we going to do as a result of this? How can we take this data, take these learnings, and actually benefit from them? Now, of course, the older way of doing this would be to, forward this video of mine to your creative strategist or copywriter or whoever it may be. Spend a couple of weeks briefing a few new pieces of copy and coming up with a new brief for your brand. Taking some of this and writing out a few ways as to how you can come up with a few new formats for a winning concept, or communicate premium without necessarily saying premium, or sell the idea of permission to your audience. But of course, this is going to take you weeks and weeks. And the new way with AI, of course, is by far the most effective way of doing this. Now, you can very, very simply go ahead and download the exact transcript of this YouTube video. You can paste that, you can download that TXT file, put that into somewhere like Claude, and you can ask Claude to summarize the winning patterns that I've identified from these brands, and then you can go and ask Claude using all of your brand data and information to come up with some briefs, some angles, some concepts for your brand specifically. The biggest benefit of AI in any of this kind of situational context is data ingestion. You can even go ahead and pull up the ad libraries of Glossier, AG1, True Classic, Chewy, Our Place, Casper, Magic Spoon, and 50 other DTC brands. And you can simply download the static image files and the MP4 video files of all of their winning ads. And you can upload every single one of those files into somewhere like Claude or Gemini or even Manus. And you could ask that AI, that LLM, to extract all of those winning gaps, the psychological analysis, the mechanisms that are being used, identify the common patterns, the common things that we're seeing in the structures that these brands are using and how they're making ads so effective, and simply ask it to replicate those patterns for your brand. So as much as these lessons are useful, and of course they are, because that's what these billion-dollar brands are using and how they are seeing so much success across their brands, these lessons are only effective if you go and implement them. So my advice to you would be download the transcript of this video, download the ads that these brands actually have live, upload them into your preferred LLM with brand context for your brand, and come up with some new concepts that you can test same day. Now, below this video in the comments, I'm going to be uploading the link to the swipe file, which is publicly available. I use Foreplay to swipe the ads, but you don't need to have to sign up to Foreplay to this. It's publicly available, as I said. So open that up. You can literally download all of the ads that I've analyzed by these brands in this video and a whole lot more. Upload them along with the transcript to your LLM and start coming up with some new ideas and concepts for your brand. With that being said, I hope you found this video tremendously valuable. There is so much value to be taken from these brands. Go and use it, come up with some new killer ads with AI, and I'll see you in the next video.